Hello, I'm Brad.
And I'm Jason.
You are listening to
Dice in Mind.
For this week's episode, we're going to hit the second half of our chat with Malcolm Sheppard from Green Ronin.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, we talked a lot about the upcoming Fantasy Age second edition.
Yep. And Age as a system in general.
And yes, and Age, we have stuff to talk about during the GM corner for that. But now we're going to get into discussion, and it's a fascinating one where we're going to hear. We're going to talk about the Orc License Alliance and the Open RPG Creative License that Green Ronin has signed on for, and some other stuff that was new to us.
And you'll hear it.
You'll hear it. So thanks again to Malcolm Sheppard at Green Ronin, to Troy Hewitt at Green Ronin for helping us and for everything that they've both done for us.
True friends of the podcast. Really appreciate it. And Malcolm, we really appreciate once again just your spending so much time with us that we had to break this discussion up into two separate.
I think it's more important that we be gracious at the fact that he delayed his watching of Picard to
he didn't delay it. He squeezed us in beforehand.
Well, no. I'm trying to.
But yes, I agree.
He could have just told us to take a hike that night because that's Picard night. So,
I would have.
Yeah, I know you would have. That's why I'm saying we have to be gracious of the fact that he didn't do what you or probably I would have done.
Yeah, we are grateful, and before we sidestep for 45 minutes onto Star Trek Picard,
that's another episode.
That's another episode. It's coming, people. It's coming. Yeah, let's go over to the second half, part 2 of our chat with Malcolm Sheppard, where we just asked him, hey, what do you think about everything that's been going on? Green Ronin developer at large, Malcolm Sheppard, has over 20 years of experience in the RPG industry as a writer, designer, and developer, starting with work on the Mage, the Ascension line for White Wolf. His other credits include work on Exalted, Shadowrun, Scion, Vampire the Masquerade, numerous Chronicles of Darkness titles, Blue Rose, and Fantasy Age. Now at Green Ronin, his work focuses on the modern Age RPG, along with other Age system works, though he's also developed Orc, the role-playing game, and performed writing and editing duties for the Sword Chronicle RPG. Malcolm lives in Ontario, Canada, and coaches historical fencing, rapiers, and longswords and such on the side.
All right. Well, okay. So the context is that the OGL has this purpose that is not actually what is written down on paper, but is understood by relatively well-informed people in the industry. Yeah. And the not on paper purpose is it describes the area in which you can work, in which Wizards of the Coast will not take legal action, whether it's legitimate or not. Because the truth of the situation is that it doesn't matter how legitimate an action by WotC would be, because they will just have an order of magnitude more money.
Yeah, right.
To spend on anything like that, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter. Like these documents cannot be understood as magic legalese where like I have used this OGL spell and there's nothing you can do about it, right? These are things that are decided in court by judges. And judges look at things like prevailing practices in industries, right? So the purpose of the OGL was to create that safe harbor that we can work in without causing problems. And basically when Wizards decided they wanted to change that, that meant that the good faith behind that, right, which is sometimes phrased as the gentleman's agreement, that went away, right? So all of a sudden it was like, actually, you can't trust us, right?
Yep.
We might do all kinds of crazy things
Absolutely.
and just do you regardless, and all of this stuff. So, you know, that's the root of the panic. Like, it's not something that's just amenable to whatever the theoretical opinions of folks online, or even lawyers online are, because it comes down, you know, although the opinions of lawyers are certainly more important, but it comes down to what action that corporation is going to take.
Right.
And once that becomes unreliable, that creates an enormous loss of stability, especially for companies that were all in on business plans that have to do with that relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's a good idea that has kind of snapped people awake to the idea that, you know, all it takes is a change in strategy in this enormous corporation, or even a change in politics. I actually have Hasbro shares, and here's my unsupported suspicion. One of the things that happened, I think it was last year, was that there was an attempted hostile takeover of the board of Hasbro by an investors group, and part of that was the investors group saying specifically that they felt that Wizards was mistreated by Hasbro, and that they would take they would take over the board and they would give Wizards a place to shine.
Wow.
So, I strongly but they lost. So I strongly suspect the board was highly motivated to do something to Wizards after that point.
Yeah.
Right. Again, like, that is just my off the cuff guy who got a package insulting this activist shareholder group throughout from Hasbro opinion. Right.
Yeah.
But it has kind of woken people up. I think the orc is a great opportunity. It's certainly Green Ronin is involved with it. I can't really tell you. We are developing plans for it. It's not. I can't tell you what they are.
Yeah, of course.
I can assure you that it's more than, oh, we don't know, we'll do something, right? There's something coherent, but we can't really talk about it right now.
Yeah, of course.
This is all still churning and all that. We wouldn't, it's organic right now.
Yeah, some of the systems that are being devised are kind of struggling with how much of their own identity they should have.
Yeah.
Right. Certainly one of the things that it did for us is it had us accelerate plans to make changes to, the Age Creators Alliance, which we do in partnership with Drive-Thru, right? And this is one thing where, Troy talked to me and he told me specifically that I could tell you exactly what changes we were going to make. I have the document in front of me and I can tell you all about it.
Fire away.
So the first thing is we're going to open up some settings.
Wow.
That means that people can do things for Blue Rose, Threefold, and Cthulhu Awakens.
Wow.
Let me see the list again. As I said, I have it.
If Malcolm goofs up, he feels that electric shock to the back of the hand, and he knows he's off track.
Yeah. So, sorry, there's a lot of product types.
We could always too.
Sorry, yeah.
No. You can queue us up, and we can always edit it out. So, Troy, you may never even hear this.
So we're going to expand it to compatibility with Blue Rose, Cthulhu Awakens, Fantasy Age, and Modern Age.
Wow.
Right. We were initially overly cautious with new rules content, so we've bumped that up to 50% limit.
Oh, interesting.
Right. We still don't want rules focal material. Settings and adventures are what we prefer. And of course we don't want things that contradict Green Ronin values. So, if you are some, alt-right person who really wants to make some stupid comment about Blue Rose, that's going to disappear. And
as it should.
Yeah, as it should, right? And also, like, all right, podcast better not swear. Anyway,
it hasn't stopped us before.
Yeah.
a couple of the other little convolution has to do with Cthulhu Awakens in particular. The ironclad rule we have is you either reference things in the Cthulhu Awakens core book, or you make up entirely new things.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is because there are so many things that people think are open, that are public domain in the Cthulhu mythos that aren't.
Oh, sure.
You can't reference other Cthulhu games that are out there. Material.
So
that makes sense.
And we're not going to pretend that Call of Cthulhu doesn't exist and isn't the flagship mythos game, right? Like, we're not going to do that, right? And that becomes relevant because a lot of things that have appeared in Lovecraft stories have been elaborated on in Call of Cthulhu, and given, say, specific names. And those have been thought of as open as well, and they're not, right? So there's just a lot of weeds. And also, like, why not be creative? Like, one of the themes of Cthulhu Awakens is we work entirely with the public domain material. But the idea is that our process is we are expanding and extending and adding to it, like the original authors or like modern authors do, right? So we want you to do the same, instead of thinking, well, this is the perfect time to convert something that we've seen before, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very specific thing. But that is sort of the highlight of the big changes that we're trying to implement. There's we have some delays. Part of it is staff priority, and part of it is on the drive-through side, because they're busy, very busy now.
Well, bet.
But we're looking forward to it. I know, certainly, I hope people pick up some things from Threefold and do some work on it. I loved working on that setting.
I don't think it gets as much, and again, not indictment. I grabbed the quick start for that some time back, and I referenced it when Jason and I started doing some work in Mage. I don't think it gets the credit as much as it deserves. I think it does.
Well, I will certainly agree with you. But I think part of it too is that there was a kind of a timing issue, because it came out, and then once again the pandemic happened, and that kind of put a kibosh in a lot of the timeliness of support we're going to offer, right? Because we have an adventure book for it, Five in Infinity. I love it, but it took us forever to get it done, right? Because of things like that. And because at one point it was very hard to get anything printed at any decent.
Yeah, we'd been hearing that.
The cost of shipping containers multiplied, and it wasn't just in Asia too, right? Like we switched to printers in Europe and in the US, and they can't have as many people running the line. Right. And it applied to all parts of infrastructure and warehousing and all these things. So many things that we just couldn't do anything about. And unfortunately, that meant that some of our plans suffered. I was ready to do a bunch of books for Threefold, right? It was designed for that. It was designed to feel like a modern fantasy setting that has already existed for 20 years.
Wow.
Okay.
Right?
Do you think it's still in the docket at some point, or is it...
I think if I were to do it again, probably as a dedicated RPG.
Okay.
Certainly with Modern Age, we're kind of reaching the limit of what we can produce for it as a generic system.
Right.
So certainly Cthulhu Awakens represents sort of a development of realizing that, right? Because we kind of made it as far as powers, right? Which we're still looking for basically a printing spot for. But it's written. It's written, laid out. It needs a bit of art and a proof. But once we did that, we're like, well, what are we going to do now, right? We have a bunch of books full of options and things like that, and we do have some ideas. Like, it's not like we're never doing another Modern Age book, but it certainly will serve as it served as a seed for the Expanse. We kind of realized it could serve as a seed for other games. So Cthulhu Awakens kind of came out of that. It was originally a Modern Age supplement, and then midway through we thought, no, it should be its own book. We all originally thought, oh, it'll be a streamlined mini core book, but then we had so much fun doing it that it ended up being bigger than the Modern Age core by a bit. So
I know the Sol. Is it the Sol system?
Awesome.
I think the Sol system source book. Is that the one I'm thinking that's coming out? I think mine's shipping in March, at least unofficially. So for the Expanse, and so I love, like I said, it was so much faster for us to get moving on
such a good system.
With Modern Age, and we used in effect the Expanse quick start adventure.
We were looking for we wanted a ready-made sci-fi adventure so we could give it a shot.
No, that's perfect.
But tweaked it with some of the Modern Age stuff, so it was like kind of a little mishmash, but we had a blast.
That speaks to how great the Expanse is. Certainly it's those experiences that we're thinking about it, because we have been like noodling ideas for Space Age.
Do it.
And there's just a lot of stuff, right? Like this, like we've got all these core books coming, right?
Man.
Fifth Season and Cthulhu Awakens and Fantasy Age. So and we're having conversations about Blue Rose. Right. That involves some, big changes, cool stuff that again has come from everybody contributing to this kind of knowledge base of age mechanics. Right. So it's funny because in a meeting today, we were like, I think Ian was saying, we were talking about whether or not stunts should get tweaked by level. Right. And I kind Modern Age Mastery Guide has some stuff for that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He goes, oh, great. I'll look in that. So those are the kind of conversations we have.
See, that's cool. I think I don't know if I mentioned that before recording, but you're drinking your own champagne.
Yes.
So, and I think that's cool. And I think this is like a prime time, not at the expense of any other, but people are looking at different platforms now. They kind of got a sour taste in their mouth,
and it's certainly why it's ended up being kind of lucky that that Fantasy Age has taken its time, because we seem to have stumbled into a good time to have a new fantasy RPG.
Yeah, nice.
No, that's funny too, because Jace, you and I were talking about that. We're playing in a more realistic spacey, within 100 years of current times where we're gaming. Now having something out there where we can leverage the same mechanic in effect, but play in a high fantasy world or whatever. I mean, Jason picked up a book on Netrunner Android. We've even talked about looking and using the age mechanic in that environment too.
I mean, we did just do a small Cyberpunk supplement.
I spent a lot of time looking at those online. Those look gorgeous.
Cyberpunk Slice, very well received. And I think I want to do more slices, right? Like post-apocalyptic, urban fantasy, all of those things. And some of those things will bring in some systems that we've presented before. But there's always going to be new stuff. It's always walking that balance, right? Yeah. Because we have some great universal mechanics for things, but that doesn't mean they can't be refined better for specific implementation. So, for example, a lot of the augmentation stuff in Cyberpunk Slice, you could get that from the Modern Age Companion, but you have to do a little more work. And we also added some new systems to interlock. So you can play an entirely synthetic character with Cyberpunk Slice if you want.
Yeah, it's so cool. Yeah.
And we have systems for that because, like, it's the 21st century. Like, you absolutely want to play Motoko Kusanagi if you if it catches your fancy, right?
Yeah.
Like we have leaned so much further into transhumanism and a general understanding of how computers work that sparks the imagination. And that actually got me too, because I was thinking of, well, what else can we do with this? And it's like, what do people like? They like fantasy cyberpunk games. They always like the fantasy cyberpunk games, right? So, and I've always been resistant to that because, you know, there is a market leader in Shadowrun, and you know, I don't want to do anything that is just kind of like Shadowrun, but you know, because where's the creative interest in that? But I hit on something the other day, so I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I found a way to do a fantasy cyberpunk take that is not going to be like Shadowrun. And
interesting.
And it's a secret right now, but I'm hoping to do something with it.
Well, that's another book. So.
Yeah, that's another book. It might be a game.
Yeah,
it
right.
Might be a supplement, right? Like who knows? I like personally. This is not a Green Ronin position, but what I would love to do is I would love to do lots of setting focused age games.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You know, like 5th season, like the expansion, like Cthulhu Awakens, but getting more, you know, certainly with a balance between licensed and what we develop.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think the interesting thing to do is to do more things like Blue Rose and Threefold and things like that, and wed them to the system and use that in interesting ways. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things I want to increasingly do with the setting is develop a strong premise and then say, what are all the weird things that happen because of this premise, right?
Yeah.
Because that is kind of like, well, it's a classic. It's the classic way you do speculative fiction, right? And it was one of the things in Threefold actually was that I really wanted to do kind of a Portal Fantasy version of Planet of Hats Star Trek episodes. Getting back to Star Trek.
You know
what I mean by Planet of Hats?
No.
Okay. It's when you go to it's the classic Star Trek episode where you go to a planet and the planet has this one weird thing about it.
Yeah.
The story revolves around this one weird thing.
Yeah.
Jim, these people are all wearing hats. They're looking at us funny.
Yes.
Bones, perhaps they've never seen a hatless man before. It intrigues them. Perhaps it enrages them.
Yeah.
Right? That's the Planet of Hats scenario, right?
Nice.
So I wanted to do that, like, so I wanted a lot of Threefold to functionally be like that, where you're going to this alternate Earth or magical plane or dimension, netherworld, and there is a specific speculative-y type problem that's not necessarily rooted in science. It can be rooted in, you know, the other weird powers that we have, right? And you go in and you solve that problem. And I think that's among other things, one of the hints of that is that the, you know, default player character faction Threefold all have fancy badges and distinct colors representing their branch.
Makes sense.
Which gets back to my frustrated desire to work on the Star Trek IP.
Little subtle.
Yeah,
hey, I know. Speaking of Star Trek and synth, I think you have.
You got to go watch.
Yeah, there's to keep it time agnostic, since I always tend to break the fourth wall.
We've gotten a good hour in. I think I've earned my Star Trek Pickard.
John Luck Pickard, you got it.
Yeah, with featuring John Luck Pickard.
Yeah, Malcolm, thank you so much.
You're gonna be so pissed when the Enterprise D blows up, dude. So pissed. Oops, did I spoil it?
Yeah, now I got to put the explicit on. That's all right. Malcolm was behaving so well too, and you ruined it.
I ruined it.
Now you've made an enemy for life.
That's right.
Hey, we gotta have you back once toward, better part of the year, once
Well, after Picard is
Awakens.
over, after Picard is over, we'll figure out together a way to get you into the license, and then we'll have repaid our debt.
Oh no, that's all on me. I should probably just write Modiphius or something, or they're the ones that did, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, we've had Jim Johnson, the program developer, on a number of times. He's a great guy, and he's super receptive to people.
Well, after all that moaning, who knows if I'll even have the time, but thank you very much. But I guess this is adieu, and call me up to chat anytime. It's always
we love having you.
Thank you so much for being back. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Cheers.
We never ask for and never get really teasers from anyone, but Malcolm, we know something's coming now just based off of what we've talked about. So right. I'm very curious to see what Green Ronin has in store. And I know just based off of the conversation that we had, just this whole open licensing initiative that's out there. I think we've talked about how an unfortunate circumstance like the pandemic really kind of jump started a new era of gaming. And I'm just wondering, just based off of what we hear, like Malcolm's personal opinions on all of this, and are we entering a new age of open gaming just based off of how all of these companies are coming together? Look at the list of like the Orc License Alliance,
it's massive, and most of the big players are there.
Yes. So,
I think, it's about, to me, it's part of the ongoing democratization of knowledge that we see in the world. And it's been coming for a long time. And now it's like, okay, we are increasingly democratizing information. We are beginning to democratize education. And now we're talking about, it's a little kitschy maybe, but democratizing play. And I don't know. I don't know. We're going to have to see, right? Green Ronin's announcement, whatever it's going to be, is going to be out approximately around the time this episode drops. So as we're recording, we don't know what's coming. I don't know, Brad. I'm looking forward to seeing where this all goes, no matter what happens.
Yeah, I'm actually, there's a number of reasons I'm excited is to watch how this plays out.
Yeah.
And then specifically what Green Ronin's plans are.
Yep.
And ultimately, we'll talk about this in a little bit, just from personal perspective, what we're going to see with Fantasy Age 2, Fantasy Age 2nd Edition.
That's right.
And the Age mechanic. So,
which lends itself better than most to even a partially open mentality.
And I don't, maybe it's just I like something fresh and different. There's not really any game out there on my shelf, as many as there are, that I haven't enjoyed reading or learning about.
No.
But what I have found is, after us working on some of the stuff we're working on with Modern Age, the idea of playing high fantasy using an alternate system than what we've used to, something different.
Yep.
And using fantasy, I've pondered the idea of using, Fantasy Age. We've talked about it. Then all of a sudden, when we found out that 2nd edition was coming out,
that's a good point.
now I'm like, I think I even emailed him and said, hey, how many books are there coming out at launch? Because I need to budget for it.
And look, you know what? At least you're being honest with yourself and others.
Oh, I'm more than the first step is recognizing you have a problem, and I have a problem.
Hello, my name's Brad, and I have a problem.
Yeah, I have a full bookshelf, and I really haven't removed a lot. So I did parse through and remove stuff, but between picking up the Expanse materials, I do have the new Sol system. I think it's a Sol system resource book that's coming out.
Yeah, you don't have that yet, right?
No, it's coming out I think later this month. But I have it on pre-order. And there's other stuff, but
there's so much other stuff. But no, to your point, I don't think either of us has encountered any game we haven't simply enjoyed going through. And Green Ronin occupies an increasingly prominent position on both of our shelves.
Well, yeah, and I'll be honest, the introduction to the Age system for me was really Fantasy Age, because I saw, let's be honest, there are well-known people playing Fantasy Age.
Well, Will Whedon's Titan's Grave. I remember when we were just starting to talk about the possibility of this podcast, you had pointed me in that direction. You're like, there's this mechanic, this game called Fantasy Age. He's using that system. I watched the videos and didn't really know enough at the time. And now I'm kind of tempted, honestly, of going back and watching Titan's Grave just to hear.
Yeah, I think Sam
the
Whitmore
mechanic.
And some other folks are.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, I think from a personal growth perspective in this realm, I have come to find how cool all these different mechanics are that we did not honestly have any exposure to before we started doing this.
None.
And Wadifi's 2D20 system as an example, and then the Age 3D6 system. I think I said it, if I recall, I said it during when we talked with Malcolm, the ability for us to generate characters and use as part of the Expanse Quick Start the adventure. We haven't finished yet, we just started, getting our characters ready took an hour.
I mean, that was really slick.
It was really fast,
and it was fun. And I think, and maybe this is a good place to wrap before we transition, but I think, and we said this a little bit, I think, when we were chatting with Malcolm, but I know you and I have talked about, you and I have talked about this more so, that character creation between the two of us wasn't just fun, but there were aha moments throughout it where we kept saying, oh, that's neat. And that was our first time through creating a character out of the core rulebook. And I don't know that I've ever had that experience the first time I've created a character in a system, because you know the deal. Everyone knows the deal. You're hopping all around, you're looking, you're going back to chapters, and with Modern Age it was just so sequential. Things just made sense as we were going.
Well, I think Malcolm said it, and it must be, and I'm speaking out of turn. It's maybe a cultural thing. He said he doesn't like session zeros.
Yeah.
And I get it, because we didn't really even have a session zero. We had a halftime zero. I mean, literally it was,
there were no performances. I mean, we should be clear about that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was very easy to do, and it was fun. Not that it isn't fun to create characters in other systems. It was just really fun to go through the material and do it.
Very, very well written.
I almost think that I need to stop calling it the GM corner and more like the GM library, just based off of the increasing amount of shelf space that I am utilizing.
Yeah, because Candlekeep's already taken by a publisher, right?
Yeah.
We can't call ourselves that. Okay.
No, we can't call it. No. But I mean, you work in academia, so I would think you could probably come up with some really cool academically oriented term if we ever wanted to rename it. Let's head on over to the Dyson Mind GM library or whatever.
Right.
So that's an assignment for us.
A metaphoric polyhedral holodeck book place.
I think we just named it.
That's terrible. Okay, what do you have?
So I got two things, and one of them I think we're going to piggyback off each other. This one I read through some of it. It's been sitting on my desk here. I'm not down at my desk all that often because I'm not working in this area right now. But I'm going to put the book up. I'm not shading my screen, so it's going to come in reverse. But I want to just see what your reaction is going to be when I show you this.
Okay, Brad's
as a
holding up.
This is a book that is based. It is 5e compatible.
Okay.
And it is a fantasy role-playing setting.
Oh, look at that. Wait, let me see the bottom of that. Does it just... Oz, a fantasy role-playing setting by... Who's it by?
It is by Andrew Kolb, who also did a fantasy role-playing setting for Alice in Wonderland. And Andrew, I would, if by some slim chance you ever listen to this episode... and
as one of our thousands of listeners.
And if we haven't bugged you already, or you haven't, and if you haven't put out a restraining order on us yet, I'd love to have you come in and talk because
So tell us about this.
Okay, so real briefly, I grew up. You and I have been talking about Trek. The other thing that I spent a lot of time, you and I both are voracious readers. You more so now than me these days, but I read through all of the original L. Frank Baum Oz books.
Really?
When I was in grade school, all 14 of them. And then
there are 14.
There are 14.
Tells you how little I know about any of this.
And then another woman who really became like I don't know the exact terminology or the exact relationship, but she became in effect the caretaker of the Oz story.
Okay,
and Ruth Plumley Thompson was her name.
Okay.
And I read about 10 of hers.
Jeez,
and there have been subsequent books written. I don't know I think there might be still here and there. But I've always been fascinated, and I found why this came up is I was looking for something to do some like retro reading like I did when I was younger, and for 99 cents there was a Kindle set of the original 14 Oz books.
Okay.
And up came the this, and it's done by Andrews McNeil Publishing, which also is the publishing group that does Zweihandler.
Okay.
And I think that might have been a connection. And I saw this and I started researching it. And it is really, I haven't dug too deep into it yet, but really it's focused on Emerald City.
Okay. And Brad's holding up a map. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I'm holding up a map of Emerald City. And, you can choose different types of characters and they sit within like a cowardly type alliance, Daughters of the Rainbow. Here are NPCs for Glinda and for the Scarecrow. There's all sorts of stuff for someone who, I'm not an Oz maniac, but I grew up reading the books. Yeah. And I thought it would be a fun read, and maybe someday. But what I've read about reviews is that it's a really good game for 5e to get obviously the younger generations in.
Oh yeah, isn't that interesting?
So that's one more on that. But the bigger thing that was going on this week, the only reason I brought that up now is because you were in town this past week.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that another time, but I didn't even bring that book up because we were so busy.
Yeah, fair enough.
We got
a really cool email recently.
We got a really cool email from Troy Green Ronin. We're not going to give away super detail, but we got preview materials for Fantasy Age 2nd edition.
We did indeed. And when Brad says preview materials, Brad means the preview edition of the rulebook for Fantasy Age 2nd edition. And we're not at liberty as this drops to say much about it other than our impressions.
Yeah, and what else? Malcolm did, I believe, mention that because he mentioned the fact that as they've worked through this, they've taken what they've learned from the Expanse, from Blue Rose, from other, modern age, and some of the stuff we'll see in here, and I think some of the stuff they'll talk about at the start is how you will see what they've learned and dynamics and stunts and things that they learn in other books and how they are integrating them into 2nd edition.
I was surprised to see that they've updated the mechanic to a 10d6.
Yeah, I was really surprised at the 1d3 rolls that we had.
Right. No, we're kidding people. It's still the same beautiful system you've come to know and love. But I will say, like I said, we can't go into a lot of detail. It's written as well as prior materials, and I've always been a big fan of how they
how they write their content, because it feels like to me it's something that if nobody's ever played the game before, I could see someone grabbing the book, opening the book up, and then reading through it with everyone and talking through it and being engaged. It's a very the material's like immediately feels like you can apply it in a group. And I don't know how to explain that well.
No, it's like we were saying earlier in this episode in terms of our session 0, right? Of just being able to do this. And I'm just flipping through the PDF right now, and it's just lovely. Because the artwork's all here. It's so readable. So like I compare it to the first Fantasy Age rulebook, to Modern Age, to The Expanse, even to the 5th season. I think this might be the most visually clean, accessible, elegantly laid out of all of them so far.
Yeah, and the artwork in here
is
really well done. I mean, if you go to page 15, the first thing I thought on page 15 was like, it is like a spitting image of you.
Okay, hold on. I'm scrolling to page 15. Oh, I think I know what this is going to be. Yeah, it's the dwarves. Yeah.
Well, I could have gone with page 17.
I'm not even going to go there. So,
okay. No, you got to go to page 19.
Oh no, I'm ignoring you now.
No, go to page 19.
No, we're muting you now.
No, page 19.
Okay, hold on. We're going to page 19. Halflings, right? Yeah. It's we're a family friendly podcast, so I'm not going to say anything. But I mean, I really, with all these images, right? We've talked about. See, that's really nice. I'm just looking. We've talked about this stuff. When it comes to fantasy, I like much of what D&D puts out from Wizards in terms of images, although of course their books really vary. Paizo, as much as I appreciate the first and second editions of Pathfinder, I still find Paizo's imagery to be too frequently overly sexualized. I just do. I still think, to me, it just feels too misogynistic. Excuse me. I think this new Fantasy Age second edition, I really like the artwork. It's like this is where we should be going. Brad is having a hard time. I'm watching him, and like the eyes. I just found another
picture that's more you, but I'll leave. We've already passed by.
Yeah, we passed that.
But if you get a chance, you can look at page 40, because that reminds me of you. Go to page 40.
I'm looking. Well, I mean, before I lost the weight. Yeah.
Oh, you did look at it.
Yeah. But to that, I mean, we're making
jokes aside,
apparently my expense, but still, the artwork is, it's really well used, and it's really like finally a high concept fantasy game where I could leave this open to any page, and if my girl saw it, it would be like, isn't that cool?
You mentioned that very thing a number of times in the past, and that's become kind of a litmus test for me.
Me too.
When I look at the material,
yep,
for any book, and a lot of the material comes out here. But when I look through what we're going to see,
yep,
in second edition, I'd have no problem with, my daughter looking at this. There's nothing in there that would, I think,
be offensive.
Absolutely not. And I think that goes with the culture of Green Ronin, just based off of what you've heard with us, with Malcolm, and the times that he's been on the show. It's a game that, all games really should be able to be played regardless of who you are and how you identify.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So, and this game is, and I think, in all honesty, in many ways, I can think of a few games, 2D20 is one of them, Modern Age is another, that, when I get up there to visit, I think we could sit down and actually just whip out a couple characters and play just for the heck of it, and actually see if one of your daughters would actually play, because I sure as heck can't get my kids to even get near me.
No, I had a run of a pretty good run of a couple of years with them. Where when you and I were getting back into this, and And I got them playing a bit, got their cousins playing a bit. That ship has sailed, as it
the
were,
kids are
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think yours are very similar to mine, focusing on school, on work, on social activities.
I was just on having lives, which neither of us ever mastered.
I mean, come on, we're both at the cusp of 50, and we still haven't quite figured that out yet.
Oh, I stopped bothering. Yeah, no, but back to the game. We will say, I think for now, it looks really good. Kudos to everybody at Green Ronin. It kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier for this episode, Brad. It could be a lot of fun to simply play Fantasy Age 2e, just actually play Fantasy Age, right? Not try to reinvent the wheel.
And I think it'll be fair to say that there will be material in the book that will help you understand the difference between the versions.
Yeah, right up front, they explain it.
And if it plays out the way it will, I think the stuff that we're going to see released as an update to the original makes it all the more compelling. And I'm actually, and again, we got a PDF preview copy. We aren't getting anything else free. We don't ask for, we're not offered anything. These are just our personal opinions. Yep. I'm very excited to read it. I really am. The final version of it.
Yeah, it would be hard not to buy this one. Yeah. And that's not particularly difficult for me, not buying things, right?
More so than me, but
yeah. I'm better about. I mean, I'm more selective in the sense of I'm cheaper, right? But I look at this and it's like, because it would be fun to read it together.
Well, you and I, there are certain dice mechanics that resonate with us. Obviously, D20.
Yep.
5e, right?
Yep.
2D20, Modiphius system.
Narrative.
The Genesis narrative.
Yep. Still a sucker for that.
Yep. And really 3D6 is up there now with us as well. So
because again, it's just from back in the day of playing the D6 system from West End. That 3D6 really, and then you add the mods and you add the stunts, and it just goes back to that whole notion of this is simulating real life, but in a fun, somewhat cinematic way.
Yeah, and that's jumping to modern age, that idea. Well, we've talked about it before, we'll talk about it again. Just something as simple as, are you going to be gritty, pulpy, or cinematic when you design a game within the modern age universe? How cool is that? That's just
cool. Yep.
Yeah. So
all right, everybody, you know the deal. Thanks as always for being with us.
Oh, take a look at never mind, I'm kidding.
Oh boy. So in 2 weeks it'll just be me. Brad's leaving the podcast. All right. Be well, stay well. We will see you in a couple weeks.